And we are live.
That we are, it seems.
Howdy.
What's up? We're done with another arc, which means it's time for another one of these things, I guess. Give people a couple minutes to filter in as we get up and running with this. We started more on time than we normally do somehow. I'm not sure how we pulled that off this time, but
Yeah,
no complaints.
Considering the last minute scramble to make sure we were like, oh, hey, wait, I forgot this.
Oh yeah, no. Yes, welcome to the Weirdwood stream, where we're gonna talk about Operation Weirdwood or Chapter Weirdwood. I'm still not quite sure in my headcanon if they are chapters or operations, but they're
The
both.
Weirdwood incident.
The weird. That's actually probably the correct name for it.
That's a good way to put it.
Weirdwood incident.
I like
Yeah, it's
that.
not an official op. It's a cowboy thing or outlaw thing, I guess more accurately. It has no support, no sanctions, no official recognition. Like we have no idea who Finch is. So yeah, no, the incident's pretty good actually. That's a pretty good synopsis of the entire operation too. Honestly, yes. Welcome.
Yeah, well, let's go around and of course introduce ourselves really quick.
Yeah.
I'm Alex, mail online on all the Instagram, Twitter, social media world. But in campaign, I go by Foxtrot, aka John.
I am Jad, and my handles are all over the place. I'm Baradojin on Twitch, as well as Jadicus Finch on Instagram. I once was the good Father Faustus, and now you have to deal with me playing Firestarter.
And of course, I'm Charlie, aka Mordak, a bunch of places. I am your handler for this nightmare trip we find ourselves on, and sadly, we cannot be joined by Dylan tonight. He is predisposed. He plays Florence. Arguably, this is a super weird one not to have Florence for because you get some real hints at some stuff that may be coming down the pipe at you for Florence, but we'll cover that next operation. So Operation Weirdwood was our operation that the setting was actually picked via a contest we ran on Twitter. We'll be doing another one of those. We got given Savannah, Georgia, and then I spent 2 or 3 weeks researching Savannah, Georgia, and if you at any point thought I was being a little bit mean to Savannah, Georgia, no, that was me taking some ridiculous history I found about Savannah, Georgia, and walking it back like 5 or 6 steps. You're never more than 10 feet away from a corpse or a grave in Savannah, Georgia thing. That's a thing they advertise on their tourism sites occasionally. I grew up next to a town called Salem, Mass. That was like maybe too way into, but like really embraced the whole like, oh, we had witch burnings and like our witchy history and like lots of weird stuff happened here. Holy hell, the Savannah put that to shame. Like they are way into like we're the most haunted city in America because a lot of bad stuff happened here.
Wow.
You know, like hauntings are great though, because that also just means that if I can find a real estate spot with like a genuine haunting, less money usually.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yes, there are some things I found as part of this that were like they could become their own Delta Green campaigns. Like the entire Delta Green could take place in Savannah, Georgia, with some of the weird stuff. Like I, I'm blanking on the name of it. It's called like the Devil's Guards. There's a famous movie that came out a bunch of years back that like it's an actual like it's obviously a movie so take some liberties, but like the movie itself is really strange. You're like, there's no way in hell this happened. The actual events that inspired the movie, you go, if you made a movie of this, no one would believe it was real. Like this is way too ridiculous to have happened. Like the movie is again like a toned back version of like, okay, there's a lawyer, there's a murder, there's voodoo, the defendant dies the day after he's like exonerated because he apparently broke his deal with the voodoo priestess. Like, holy hell, Savannah's wild. It was kind of fun diving into that one. I was not expecting this. I researched all the cities who wound up doing stuff in, and Savannah was kind of this bizarre. Oh, there's just stuff. Okay.
Yeah, no, this was a fun twist on the campaign because I've never done a cowboy op, so that was fun to dive into.
This is kind of my. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. I'll touch on my thing in a second.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I'm still kind of going through my first run of Delta Green as like a continuing story and stuff. So definitely, I'm just not re-experiencing, but really experiencing the lore as well as just how Delta Green operates all at once. So it's so different than what we've done so far.
I think like where Weirdwood gets fun is like we've primarily played like the to pull the screen back and to get to real spoiler territory. Yes, the majority of Hawthorne's Crusade is a program story. It's in Delta Green. There are two Delta Greens. There's the Outlaws slash Cowboys, and then there's the program. And neither one is great. They both have their own very specific idiosyncrasies to them that like make them both better and meaningfully worse than the other. And the more you kind of deep dive into Delta Green lore, the more you kind of come like, yeah, I think the Outlaws are correct in
Mhm.
their approach to things, but also like they are significantly worse. Like there is a certain darkness to any cowboy operation or every cowboy story within the Delta Green stuff that's like, are you even sure Delta Green exists? Like, or did some crazy guy go like, you need to murder these cultists for me? And I work for a secret organization that may or may not be part of the government. Or it may be so secret it's no longer part of the government. Do you have any questions? No? Cool, because I'm blackmailing you. That's how yeah, that's kind of the basis. I'm exaggerating some, but also not really. Like, I think there's parts that be taken from both sides of the Delta Green argument that make it fun. But yes, I've been trying to kind of slide the outlaw ops into our stuff a little bit more because there's a certain craziness to them where it's like, go figure it out. Just do it. Did things get messy? Yeah, things got messy. Okay.
I think it's funny in that when you or when we first started playing with Father Faustus, like he was introduced as a green Delta Green agent. But then Firestarter kind of came in and he was introduced as a veteran Delta Green agent. But I still, as a player, don't really know the kind of ins and outs of the difference between like cowboy and program or outlaw and program. So,
The fact you're confused on what to call it is exactly the point. And yeah,
um, definitely there were times where I'm just like, all right, maybe as a veteran, he should have been looking for extra cameras, and I don't know how that slipped. But uh, at the same time, it's like he had at least enough foresight to buy a giant barrel.
yeah. No, no. From a lore perspective and kind of a playing of the games perspective, yeah, there are some nuanced differences from a kind of player-facing angle. The books for Dolphins flat out at one point say never actually tell your players when you're playing which side of this they're on. Like it should be
Mm.
annoyingly vague about what you're playing. So yes, we're breaking that a little bit, but also I think everyone who kind of knows Delta Green knows we're playing a program story to some extent. Or are we?
Yeah. Well, and then also technically, Firestarter. This is not his first campaign with Charlie being a GM.
No, no, let's not talk about that though. I mean,
Oh,
they want us to talk about that.
It's the
This,
Lord.
it's the Wendigo. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Wendigo story. Yeah. So part of what makes part of what makes Weirdwood so fun for me is we get kind of two annoying references to negative modifier Delta Green lore that exists. That's one of those things will make it to the Patreon eventually. Actually, I'm cleaning it up in process right now. It is a messy audio file. It's actually how I met Dylan and kind of the origins of Fiddlesticks slash Tranche, Florence, and Francis all come from a campaign I was in that kind of fell apart. That we were recording parts of it, and the only episode I have is ironically the Vegas incident that gets referenced, and it got real bad. Like we will put it out after the fact, and you'll understand maybe why Florence is the way Florence is, and maybe why Tranche is a goddamn nightmare person
And Trotch was
based
your
on that one.
character, right?
Oh yeah, Tranche was my character, and I guess to kind of give some context, the Vegas incident has her like kicking in a door on a suspect, shooting at him in his house, and then bribing a bunch of policemen that show up because gunshots in a residential neighborhood with definitely cursed, maybe pharaoh objects that are just kind of in this drug den. And she's like, "Yo, you want some gold? I'ma leave now. I don't care if I make vectors of this one. I need to stay alive. It'll probably kill both of you anyway. I'm out."
That is some real Delta Green ass shit right there.
Yes. What's worse that'll happen? It kills them? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Self-correcting problem.
Yeah.
That's enough about our kind of deep lore, I guess, that does and doesn't exist simultaneously. Let's talk about Weirdwood. So obviously we introduced Agent Firestarter as part of this, the revamped Agent Firestarter, who's got all the Delta Green veteran baggage that comes along with being a veteran Delta Green agent.
It was an interesting thing to have to balance, like, familiarity with a single character mixed in with like reintroducing himself to a brand new character. Um, but at the same time, kind of like a understanding of like how you work as well, Alex, because you were still in that Wendigo, the Wendigo campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
So
it,
it was.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it was definitely like, I know I'm not supposed to know Firestarter. Like I know that was a thing, but I was so used to you being Father Faustus that like I had to just like completely like it almost like try to ignore your character at first because I didn't want to break character by accidentally being like making a Father Faustus reference or making a reference to the Wendigo campaign, which I have no knowledge of because John was not part of that at all. That was another character. So
Yeah.
that was interesting, but you did great, like just kind of coming in fresh with that character that was established and just like went right into it. So yeah, it was a little bit of interesting balance because I know it's you, but it's not you because your character's different now.
And they're such different characters too, I think. So it's kind of, once you get used to, oh, it's Firestarter now, no longer Faustus. It's like, no, the characters are so different. It's like, yeah, no, this is a new type of monster at this point. This is a person that's like, they haven't quite given up, but they've kind of like seen where they can give up in life, if that makes any sense. Like that's a
Yeah.
fair description of some of his mentality, right?
Like you take and you give, especially with
Yeah.
having to reconsider an original, like not an original character base, but a previously made character, and how that character is so drastically different from its first introduction versus a character you've already played. Ideally, I wanted to play someone so just kind of different than Father Faustus, only just to kind of like really play with just how I can role play, I guess, and interact that role play into the group.
Mm.
Um, but also just kind of taking that a step further into what I kind of secretly wanted to have Faustus do was like have the fall of a good man go into where it could have been, but then suddenly you have a good man who already fell and is now functioning.
Yeah, it's like someone cut out the in between of like the angst where now it's like, yeah, I just am who I am at this point. Like,
Mhm.
want to burn down a copy in more store? Let's do it.
Yeah. I do have a question for like the Firestarter character. Do you have lore that you've made up between the end of what the Wendigo campaign was and to how you ended up where you are now? Did you ever think about like what that lore might have been for your character at all?
Yes, only because I restructured the I had to restructure the uh, bonds.
Hey,
So
you lost like half your bonds or like 2/3 of your bonds to this, didn't you, or something? The whole bringing them back,
basically,
yeah.
yeah. So basically, all I had really was the fire chief and my bar patrons because I was playing a a firefighter who was really hesitant about just like I don't know about like starting a fire, but now it's like I really secretly like this, and now it's not even a secret anymore. But like the bond with his daughter is now gone. The bond with like his family is now gone. He just has a very weird work and just environmental bond that he kind of focuses kind of on the here and now.
Hmm.
And we'll get the and me and Chad talked about this some in the background, me kind of explaining the nightmare that is T Cell, but we will get into T Cell next season. They are
Hmm.
our main squad, if you will, and You'll get to see kind of how someone winds up with like, what if we just burned it down, being their first impulse about something. Like, it's like why not just cut this off the legs? Like, why do we have to go investigate this? Like, we have a thing we can pursue. Just do it. Like,
I like how like a lot of our campaigns just ends up resorting to why don't we just burn it down? Like that's come up several times, even before T Cell.
that is the joke of Delta Green. It's like, it's like fire didn't work. Oh no, fire didn't work.
Because fire is just such a great general cleanser. It's just like situational bleach.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's like we can get into kind of the metaphysical aspects of human psychology and fire. Like, in even the mythos of Delta Green and kind of the Cthulhu mythos, fire is this weird thing where like it. What's the right phrase? Without kind of judgment, just destroys, and that's occasionally what you need. Like, it's one of those ones where it scours the earth. It kills plants, it kills animals, it kills buildings, it kills like with enough time and enough accelerant, you can burn anything you need to hypothetically, and all it leaves is ash. And yes, in Delta Green case, that ash gets up and then goes, "But I lived." But that doesn't happen all that often, or maybe it does. We don't know yet. But yeah, like it's one of the kind of jokes in the Delta Green community is like, "Have you tried fire?" Yes. It didn't work. Yes. Oh, then we're just screwed. Like, let's run.
Have you tried more fire?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think in the kind of the campaign that Fiddlesticks comes from, there is the line of like, "Did we try fire? Yes. Did we try more fire yet? Yes. Have we tried angry fire yet? What is angry fire? I got this."
Of course, was it Trant would have angry fire or some sort of like fire modifier out there somewhere?
This again just comes from like, how do you make fire worse? Oh, there's ways of making fire worse. There's stuff that does not want to be on fire more than normal.
Yeah.
Let's turn into the weird pyromania hour all of a sudden. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of Firestarter in a nutshell. It's interesting, I think, because obviously we had the kind of the situation of the time gap happens, and within Delta Green as an organization, hey, some agents got thrown through time. There's an argument to me that maybe they need to be dead because they've been outside the confines of time, and what does that mean exactly for people at that point? Like, we'll get into it more next season, but there's a whole thing called static when it comes to King and Yellow stuff, where basically it's a kill squad watching a kill squad watch agents that may or may not be vectors going, do we have to kill them, and the kill squad watching that kill squad going, do we have to kill that kill squad once they kill them? It's like, it's a weird chain of like needlessly brutal events that's just kind of, yeah, when you have a painting that can cause you to hemorrhage blood out of your eyes, maybe this is the correct way to contain it. Like, knowing that that picture exists, that's a problem. Like, how much of it is the mind makes it real, and how much of it is like, no, it's the painting. It's the fact the painting has like, I don't even know, like it's got like 9 orphans ground up inside, but that's too dark even by my standards.
For now, until the
Yes.
campaign evolves into something really out there.
I mean, I'm tinkering with our hippie trail campaign that we may or may not do at some time in the near future, which is a whole other. If you want to look at a bizarre time period in human history, that just like, you're like, did civilization end for parts of the world actually? Like, did we just slip into some weird dream state, and that's why it's all been weird ever since the hippie trail from the 60s, 70s, and 80s is absolutely bizarre. And it's early 90s technically. It is the most like, are we sure Delta Green isn't real? Because like every part of this just seems like something bizarre is going on. You have psychedelics, you have kind of various pagan worships, and you have a serial killer running around through all of it that like, it's just a whole bizarre thing. But we're getting way off track at this point into future events. So let's talk about Weirdwood. Weirdwood picks up after our time jump. It's kind of fun having characters that are cut off from Delta Green, at least in my view, because it kind of forces you to get weird, and also asks the question of, if there wasn't an operation, would you go and do Delta Green stuff anyway? Like, can you stop being a Delta Green agent when you're told to shut up, stay home, and not become a nuisance? And the answer is no, apparently. It's not for FCell.
Nope.
Nope.
I think it's interesting though because there is an attempt. I really love, and I'm really upset. Not upset, but I'm really sad that like Dylan's not here to really talk about just the tragedy that is Florence's social capabilities, which is the most ironic thing on the planet because you see Florence just offload as much sand damage on her social bonds as much as possible, but technically is the most socially capable out of all three of us.
Yeah, now that you mention it, that's right. Because, I mean, shit, I don't have any bonds, pretty
Yeah.
much. Wow, you're right. That never occurred to me.
Faustus
Oh,
had like his weird parasocial relationship with like a conglomerate of like people and then like his boss. Firestarter is his boss and the same sort of thing. I wasn't really super creative with that, but whatever. And then
Only so many Bond options out there, really.
yeah.
yeah, and then there's Florence who has legitimate like one-on-one bonds that have like a direct effect between whatever. And she's just like, I'm just gonna project this.
Yeah, I
I'm gonna
think
slowly deteriorate these.
it's really interesting, though, because, like, she has the bonds, but, like, she is very much, like, what's the right word for it? She is very much in it, Delta Green, 100%. Like, she is the epitome of an agent because she will give all that up, like, immediately. Like, she's had no qualms, like, oh, I'll just dump this sanity or this loss on my girlfriend or something like that, and just chunks away at it. So, like, for someone who does have all these bonds, like, it's one of those things where, like, at the drop of a hat, it's like, hey, this has got to happen. You know, like, it's
No, and you're touching on how I think makes the Delta Green thing so interesting, where you have these bonds that mechanically work as little sanity shields. You're going to offload stuff onto them. The game doesn't
Mhm.
kind of encourage you to kind of make that fallout real and kind of what that hit looks like. But it also, like, if you dig under the hood, and we'll get to this at some point explaining it more, but the job that Florence is, the scientist background, it kind of touches on the whole idea of, yeah, you just kind of have more friends in these professions. They're not necessarily good friends or friends you'd like be like, yo, I got a body in the back of my trunk. By the way, Delta Green is a thing. But like, it's you're forced to be around more people as part of this. The inner workings of the society at that point require you to kind of have these relationships that like they would notice that like, yeah, you keep going out of town and you come back like angry and depressed and having all types of like mood disorders after them. And where are you going again? Oh, Savannah, Georgia. Wasn't there a serial killer in Savannah, Georgia? Yeah, weird timing, I guess. Like, there's an argument to be made that kind of from a Bond perspective, this is kind of me talking mechanically at that point. The Spec Ops guy with like one or two Bonds doesn't have a lot of friends, but also they have less people to notice them going crazy slowly. Scientists, a lot of friends. They're gonna notice that slow decline in kind of their themselves as a person.
I think I really also like the way that each of us kind of treat the bonds and stuff like that because I feel as a character, Florence is really trying to manage that duality of her life,
Yeah,
in that like Florence's shoot name or Florence's real name is still kind of unknown to me, but like Florence as an individual is still trying to like keep her life together and still kind of live in that. But Florence as an agent must kill that part of her in order for her to survive as an agent.
yeah.
So there's like that like fight between the two of them. Foxtrot uses his bonds as a resource, like, and it's really just like, oh, that's another thing just to manage. Like it's like a all right, I need to eat. Okay, I need to feed. Like it's a responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, and it's
Not
also
having
very
friends makes me strange. I must acquire friends. You there, be my friend.
which which is funny because, like, that's exactly, like, it's so fitting that the one bond I had starting was a dog, because that's also very much, hey, you have responsibilities for a dog. Take them outside, give
It's
them
also
food,
literally a
take them
friend
for
you
a
can go
walk.
out and buy. Like
Yeah.
no actual investment required. You can just go to a pet store and be like, one friend, please, and they'll be like, here.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's perfect. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, we haven't talked about kind of the theory crafting behind a bunch of this stuff, but like I've always found that you learn the most about who the characters are as people based on their bonds. Like CIA man that's attuned to violence because that's whacking them down to kind of one bond. Whose bond is a dog tells you far more than kind of any blurb you could write up. The same way that like, okay, so you're playing a member of the U.S. Coast Guard, yeah, and your bonds are stripper girlfriend 1, stripper girlfriend 2, stripper girlfriend 3. Yeah, not even names. He's a very dysfunctional person. Like you get some kind of insight into people's minds at that point, where it's like, yeah, you have a fire starter whose bonds start off as boss and bar patrons. Yeah, his daughter got kicked off that curve at some point, though. Like maybe for her own good, but also like that's a very specific sacrifice of either I need her away or she maybe started to figure out that like daddy's up to some bad stuff and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because I never even thought about like analyzing the bonds on that, but it makes so much
Yeah.
perfect sense.
I think like I've always I really am in love with like the character creation process of this game. Just because it's literally just some dude. It really is some dude in a
Yeah.
situation that they're just absolutely unprepared for, or even worse, prepared for. So,
Yeah.
how
So
do
and
you
I think this is
answer that?
to bring this actually back to Weirdwood in a weird way. I think this was our chapter where bonds become more of a thing. We're deep enough in that your bonds are getting torn up. There's more holes in them. We have kind of our time skipped to kind of justify at that point. You have, excuse me, Florence desperately trying to repair her relationships because she's now kind of sunk so much sanity offload into them that they're all in not great shape. You have Foxtrot, who did you start this off with having zero bonds, or did you end this with having zero bonds? I can't remember when I think the break happened in Weirdwood. Like you suddenly had Foxtrot go from okay, I got this dog to being like weirdly alone in the world almost instantaneously, except for Delta Green.
Well, I thought I had the neighbor briefly as a bond.
You did. You
Yes.
tried, I think, and you couldn't make the connection. I have to go
That's
back
right,
and
I did. And it wasn't until
yes,
I got super like super paranoid about them and I went to go check their mailbox to get a name and I failed at that or something at some point. So it was
yeah,
just yeah. Yeah, the only actual bond like at this point, I think at the end of this campaign chapter, like all my bonds are Delta Green bonds. I have
yeah. I think that's correct.
no bond with the dog. Uh obviously, no, not the neighbor. So yeah, it's just yeah, it's fitting because like I don't really have a social life. Foxtrot has a work life. That's what he has.
Yeah, and I think what makes that Weirdwood interesting in that kind of area is this is both like the lowest stakes, but also kind of the most publicly visible operation to date. Like all the other stuff was kind of like there's justifiable explanations for like yeah, it's like advertise this is weird because it's like it's a serial strangler. Like that's all you have to know about Weirdwood to kind of summarize its agents of F Cell going hunt a serial killer. Like that is all this like that's base value. This is what this operation is. But it's 100% not that at every single turn, except it's like, yeah, no, it's technically a serial killer hunt. It's not even a monster hunt. You're just trying to find initially who is behind these, and then it's okay, what's behind these, and then it becomes a did you fix it? I don't know. We encountered something way worse. So let's kind of, I guess, walk through Weirdwood at this point. So we wind up in Savannah, Georgia. We have new characters. We have a new character. We've got some new bonds. You have our first outlaw operation. You guys are kind of aware of that. You ride a Greyhound bus into Savannah, which I personally just love the image of Delta Green agents showing up, like no plane, no helicopter, no fancy ride, just getting off that bus, like, oh,
It
this is a
wasn't even
different.
like getting off the bus. It was being extradited off the bus with the weirdest. Like, I have a Dr. Florence and her two husbands that we need in this police car right now, and I'm already just like, how? I thought we were supposed to be incognito. How did we get here?
It's almost like you're with a bunch of inexperienced people that were given zero briefing on this one and have no concept of what they found themselves in. And we
I
revisit
mean,
that by
true.
the end. I a couple people have sent me messages about the final episode of this where it's like, yeah, I see the serial killer wall, but I was expecting more. Which, like, based on the friendlies we've dealt with, imagine how many of them were like, I was promised some weird stuff. Like, given how you all talk all this cloak and dagger stuff, it's like, okay, it's a serial killer. Yes, but like, it's just a serial killer. Why are you all like freaking out about stuff? Like, what's with the cloak? You're pretending to be FBI agents. You don't need to do that to catch a serial killer. You could just have the FBI show up at that point. Like, what? Why is this so hush hush spy games? And then it goes off the rails. And it's one of those things where kind of, from the friendly perspective, he's like, oh, they're on a Greyhound bus. No one will care. Like, he's bad at it. He is genuinely bad at kind of the spycraft part of it, which is why he just calls a phone number and calls it in type of thing. Like, it is. Yeah, it's a very deliberate choice to make our dear Officer Williams bad at kind of the Delta Green aspects of it, which is probably why he's only a friendly.
So yeah, well, let's go through the whole summary of like the story
Yeah.
then, just so we have that. Well, Charlie, go ahead, because I'm missing parts of the hit in my head right now.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty straightforward operation, kind of synopsis wise. You have to start off, you kind of have digging through the investigation, the establishment of the strangulation. So the monster from this, our tree person, that you never actually get to encounter in the operation that had statted out for us if it ever came up, is inspired by, I think it's 15 minutes south of Savannah, Georgia. There's this artist that like has this island that's just covered in like trees he's carved giant kind of Game of Thrones style faces into and built a bunch of statues out of like found wood. It is super cool and unbelievably creepy simultaneously. Like that's like going during the day, awesome. Winding up there by accident because it's just an island you could stumble onto at night would be like, what is going on here and why the tree is coming for me? Like it's the website for us is it's kind of this cool, like you can walk. It's like, yeah, there's just tree people around. And in researching Savannah, I came across this and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And Savannah's famous for its trees. So this is kind of where we have to split off some. So the Delta Green story, if you will, of Weirdwood is our boy Jimmy has found this tree that is capable of kind of sending out these minions. And so that's how it kind of is showing up in the base version of Weirdwood. Where it split was, I'm not sure if I telegraphed this too hard or you guys just made a logic leap of it's obviously Jimmy. I thought this was going to flip. You're going to follow Jimmy. He'd take you to the tree eventually. But no, you grab Jimmy, and I had a whole ending written of when Nair Lethertep shows up and does Nair Lethertep stuff where I'm like, I'm not going to need this. We're not going to, like, there's no way we wind up with, like, any of this ridiculousness needing to happen. Like, maybe I have Nair Lethertep show up at the tree being like, yo, why is my tree on fire or something? Like, but no, we get the dark ending that I'm like, holy crap, I'm actually going to use this now. Guess we're going to Jimmy's apartment. Yeah, like in kind of the handler brain versus agent brain at that point, I'm like, yeah, they're going to like investigate, maybe break into his apartment. They'll find some weird stuff. They'll find the book that takes them to the church in theory, or they follow him. And yeah, he did have a cotillion to go to, and then he would go to the tree. And he's actually going to put a picture of Florence on the tree. And the murder that happened was kind of a precept thing. The mechanic for this basically was he needs a photo and something that identifies you as a person, whether it's phone number, name, all stuff you can in theory get from, passport photos. Like the whole extra rig up at the place he works is to give him as many options at photos of people he can use for this kind of little ritual he does to send people off.
That's the connection.
Okay.
That's very like Delta Green 1 hour photo-esque combo right there.
Because it was not just like the fact that he works at like the copy station, does passport photos and everything else with that, and like whatever the heck. It was just this entire time I was like, how did this incel get strange powers?
Right?
How?
And the answer is he found a tree. He tracked down this tree so that you could have dug into the kind of cult story of the operation. Like you could have found out more about the cult that found the tree, and they vanished because they found the tree and messed up. But in messing up, they woke up the tree. So the tree's been kind of sitting out there in the woods for 20 years in idle mode, waiting for someone to kind of press the gas and make it go, if that makes any sense. So Jimmy, not actually a wizard or even like remotely good at being a wizard, he just has the juice because he stumbled upon kind of leftover ritual, if that makes any sense. And
Mm.
our boy, the Black Pharaoh slash Nyarlathotep, has his own game going on in the background that, hey, Jimmy's a much better pawn than those cultists I sent to the tree originally. He is a dumb person who has very specific and petty motivations.
Speaking of dumb person, I feel as if as the puzzles you keep throwing at us and as the scenarios you keep throwing at us gets more and more difficult, I find myself almost like not struggling, but it is this campaign was a lot more not complicated, but a little bit more thorough than say like New York or yeah, like New York. The Feast of the Century Club was definitely a little like, oh fuck, like I really have to like think.
Yeah.
I stopped drinking in the middle of in the middle of games in order for me to just be like, I can't be the idiot.
Yeah, and this one's kind of a wind back to this is a serial killer hunt. Like it is a putting the clues together to kind of find the stuff, and it's one of those things where kind of like part of what I enjoy Delta Green for when it comes to kind of the this aspect of it is okay, we got these bags of of chunks of wood that from a police standpoint are the most useless thing ever, but as Delta Green agents, they're going, what is with this wood? Like, is it the thing that's doing it? Is it some ritual thing? Like, is this an offering? Like, it kind of shifts your view when you can make the weird, completely illogical jumps of like, it's just shaped like a hand. That means it's obviously being used to kill people. Like, it's a weird logic jump you can make that you can't make in the real world when you know how the real world works. If that makes any sense, like
Hmm.
it's the Delta Green agents get to kind of have that like you get to make that jump of okay, yeah, a 5'6" person is totally capable in this universe of lifting someone 8 feet off the ground. How they're doing it may not be important, but the fact that every single detail about them disqualifies them from being a suspect doesn't actually matter necessarily.
Yeah, it's like the whole Men in Black tabloids for looking for leads kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
very much that, but obviously a lot more darker.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So you guys grab Jimmy, which I was not expecting, but also it's like, okay, cool, we're going down this incredibly specific path of where we're going with this, and I enjoyed the fact that like correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you guys thought Jimmy was behind it. Behind it, like maybe a pawn or like minorly involved in it.
I mean, like
Absolutely.
I have a very specific mental image of Jimmy, and it was one of those things of just like, this is the sweatiest person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah,
There's no way, no way. Difficult to kidnap. I mean, I guess, but like that could also just be because like we're just not good at kidnapping.
Oh God, we were awful. Like I think that was like the most chain of just horrible rolls we had back to back. That was
as
bad.
happens.
It, I feel like it really just sets the tone though of the new team because you have, I don't know, just the change between like Florence, who's kind of a neutral person, John, who's willing to do bad things for the good reason, and then Faustus was just kind of like, maybe there's a different way. But Firestarter's just like, let's do it. I brought a bucket.
No, no. I
Yeah,
think also a part of that is there's an aspect of this is the first operation post an agent dying kind of thing. It changes both how the team interacts, but also how you as players interact. Where it's like, okay, what level of slop can we get away with if it's a little bit safer from a perspective type of thing? Like it's the if we're pretty sure Jimmy's involved, we can get rid of Jimmy's body. Does it make sense just to grab Jimmy? Like it, who's gonna miss Jimmy? Turns out, Eldritch God is gonna miss Jimmy, maybe, sort of, potentially. But
Didn't have that on the list, so
it's one of those things where kind of like it's the when I wrote Jimmy, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I need to make it's like they may think he's involved. But I need to make sure like going into like until it's revealed, it's Jimmy and Jimmy alone. It can't possibly be Jimmy. Like it needs to be every single clue of no, it can't possibly Jimmy. Jimmy sucks. He's terrible. He's this kind of like yeah. He's like there's no way he's cool enough to pull off any of this. Shit, that's exactly what pulled this off, is it? Who like dedicate their lives to figuring out how to work a magic tree out in the middle of a swamp that's powered by human sacrifice and horrible, horrible blood magic in history. Like, yeah, no, that's exact. Is it this op or the next op where someone says the phrase "magic incel" and that's kind of the summary of Jimmy as a character when I was writing him up?
Probably next chapter, because if we
Yeah,
didn't
I
say
think
it
it's next
already,
operation.
yeah. Magic incel. Oh, that's great.
I really kind of like the way that we had played this out in that I think it was between the kidnapping and the interrogation, interrogation, the torture, um,
One-sided beating.
the one sided. um, it was an interesting and dramatic shift from seeing the group kind of view Jimmy as like an individual who has something that they can offer, like who has something that they need, versus like seeing him as useless and disposable,
Yeah.
and just kind of how that really bit them in the ass at the end of it.
Yeah, it goes
Uh,
from kind of human being to clue pinata, and that clue pinata is actually full of snakes, it turns out. Not useful candy.
did you did you as a handler, like as we were going through all of that, expect Jimmy to kind of end in that manner, just the cut of the femoral artery, and then what did you like? Did you just experience that moment? It was like, oh, perfect. This is where this can be introduced, or like how?
It,
What was your thought process behind that?
so when I come up with stuff like Jimmy and kind of the fact that Jimmy has a literal death curse that changes everything about the operation once it's triggered type of thing. It's one of those ones where it's like, again, I went to this being like, I don't think any of like this part of Jimmy's ever going to come up in the campaign. Like, maybe they break into the apartment, maybe they don't. Don't think Jimmy's death curse is going to get activated. Like the whole meeting at the end with our dear friend from the past, like didn't think that was actually going to show up in this. I thought this was just going to be like, oh, by the way, the tree's a Black Pharaoh thing. I thought I was dropping enough hints that could be like, yeah, Nyarlathotep once again is doing something that's maybe or maybe not related to the campaign, kind of like he was there in the last campaign and just kind of chilling, doing his weird enigmatic, I may or may not understand people way too well, elder god thing. It's one of those things where kind of like it's the torture scene's unbelievably dark. I think this is gonna sound strange. You guys treated it with the right reverence and kind of sensitivity of there's ways of conveying how unbelievably messed up the situation is without being grotesque about it.
Mhm.
And some editing happened and kind of just general cleanup. And I think it's one of those things where kind of there's a lot of thought in that sequence, if that makes any sense. It's not just like to use kind of a typical example you see in tabletop RPGs, like, oh, we torture the information out of him. It's not. That's very methodical. Like, okay, how do we extract this? How do we talk to him? Like that degradation of viewing him as a human down to a tool or kind of basically like the equivalent of a book where like maybe we can get this information to pop out of him, maybe we can't. And it's a dark, uncomfortable, like really fucked up sequence at every kind of turn. But like it's that kind of like what's the right phrase for it? At no point is it ever played off for laughs. I think that's why it works in some ways. And at a certain point, I'm like, I'm 90% sure they're gonna kill Jimmy at the end of this. Like we have the barrel in the room. Like it's Chekhov's barrel at that point. Either he's going in the barrel or he's not. It can't go. Like the barrel has to have a use. It's simple. We've made too big a deal of the barrel type of thing, and it was me kind of sitting there, kind of going, "Oh shit, we're gonna get the death curse, aren't we?" Like, because they're not ready for that. They don't like it, and again, it was the entire time going. I don't think they realize that Jimmy's actually behind this. They just think he's someone caught in a bad situation, and to kind of like harken back way to it's the Vicky thing reversed, where it's like, did you need to kill Vicky? I don't know to this day. Like, I'm not sure what the correct answer in that situation was. We have our answer from how we played it. That's our canonical answer. This is the reverse of that, where wasn't totally sure you'd ever kill Jimmy without him being revealed to be a monster, but like of the many characters you've come across in the Delta Green Hawthorne's Crusade so far that may or may not be evil people, he's super evil at the end of the day. He's killed a shit ton of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it, like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the house is the house, and from our previous one, that's like, yeah, it's it's a house. It does evil things, and the Feast of the Century Club is like evil in their own way, but like there's a certain like serial killer evil to Jimmy that's like, oh no, it's this is personal. This is like so much worse. Like, yes, eating people should not be a thing you think about ever doing, but like compared to who Jimmy is, like compared to kind of just like, no, this isn't some ends justify the means. This is a rage, petty bullshit thing in his mind of course I can do this because I can get away with it. And it's interesting where it's like, even if you, it's one of these things where I kind of came up with Jimmy originally, it's the idea of even if Jimmy isn't the big bad of this, because he wasn't when I first kind of started sketching out Hawthorne's Savannah, the kind of our Savannah chapter. Like, even if Jimmy's not the big bad of this, Jimmy still has to be like maybe worse than the big bad as things evolve. I'm like, no, it's very obvious he is the big bad, or at least kind of the human puppet the big bad is using to do his stuff in Savannah at that point, type of thing. Like, it's an interesting juxtaposition if you have this feeble, useless character on all measures. Like, the guy is he's a first rate loser was the phrase I used when I was kind of coming up with notes for him.
Mhm.
That has become one of the most prolific serial killers in history, kind of thing, in the world of Delta Green. Like, that's exactly who that character was. And there's also this kind of in Delta Green lore, there's something called a lonely, which is a whole other side thing, which are people that literally make the world around them suck through kind of some psychic stuff I'm glossing over and summarizing a bunch. And I love the idea of the lonely, but using them's kind of awkward. Like, they are 100% magical insult. They are designed as that character. They're kind of the online version of that stuff. And Jimmy's definitely my twist on like, okay, how do you take this person that like has unjustifiable rage, like has all these exceedingly negative character traits, and do like it's like no, the fact they have magic does not make them a monster. They were already a monster type of thing. The magic just made them have access to their monster desires, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like Jimmy was a hurt and weak individual who couldn't enact on his sadistic desires because he didn't have the power to do so. Once the power was actually in his hands to be able to harm others in like his weird sexual jealousy and like petty like envy or whatever the heck, and for him to kind of just start going out and just strangling people, which is a very intimate way to murder somebody,
not
by
even
the
doing
way.
it himself, sending things to go strangle people for him. Like, he's not
Yeah.
like he's either smart enough to do it or he's too much of a coward to do it himself. He's still like, no, I'm gonna do this through this method type of thing.
Like I was like as we played, I was like absolutely repulsed by Jimmy, and it was a weird kind of roller coaster to have to deal with the aftermath of like the Nyla Leththertep reveal, because I was like, despite the fact that I do like I abhor Jimmy, like I'm just repelled by that character. This is still another one of those. I was still thinking of it like this is another one of those Vicky incidents of just like
Yeah,
the team is not the team is this is not great. But then it's like, oh hey, no, you were behind it the entire time, which was like, am I justifying this because of the situation? But then having to kind of like flip back of just like, let's could therapy have solved this? Could some sort of like intervention have solved this? It was I had to decompress after that, after
yeah.
the reveal for sure.
Jimmy is up there with kind of my favorite. Like, favorite, such a weird phrase, but like of the bad guys of Hawthorne's Crusade, I'm like, he's the deepest in some ways. Like, he's a bizarre amount of depth because lots of kind of cliche stuff you can pour into him as a character, which I definitely did. Like, he has several very psychology 101 kind of problems wrong with him that yes, therapy definitely could fix parts of him, but also it didn't. Like,
Mm-hmm.
dude killed his mom and then killed a bunch of people that have the same first name as his mom, type of thing. Like, if you go into the whole victims list, there's a running theme of names and stuff that's like, okay, it's the definitely something weird going on here. Like, the guy's definitely working through something. And again, like, stuff you could have dug into is the fact that like Jimmy's mom also not a great person, but also like you're not necessarily the byproduct of your environment necessarily. So there's kind of that like feedback loop of not great person makes a monster, makes the monster goes off and does monstrous things. Oh, how did this happen? Well, your son was yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Norman Bates stuff going on there, type of thing.
I really felt that Weirdwood was very impactful for me as a player, especially just kind of experiencing this all with everyone. Because this is what I felt. What I felt was when everyone started to become more complicated. Like the characters we were engaging with were becoming more complicated. Florence has become more complicated. John, who has a very simple-minded, not simple-minded, but like a very
Straightforward.
goal-oriented,
Yeah.
yeah, he's very straightforward. All of a sudden starts becoming complicated because part of me was testing to see how well Firestarter and John was going to interact. Because that weird, almost friendship or like
Yeah.
humorous interaction between them during the abandoned gas station scene, I was just like, I really want to play off of this. Like, this is interesting.
No, after this kind of that's essentially that happens with the characters. I think naturally, where like we don't talk about it much, and like it's definitely not the focus of the game. But Deltarune is inherently like a if you take a step back and kind of actively ignore the very dark themes of the game overall, it's a funny game with some frequency. Like some of the stuff, like if you take a look at kind of a macro level view of, okay, what are we doing? Well, we need to figure out who's torturing him. Do we rocks paper scissor for that? Like, what's the democratic way of like, okay, no one wants to do this. Who does it?
Yeah. I will say it was also funny because like Firestarter and like Foxtrot's relationship initially when they were put in a social setting to be like get to know each other, John was like, like I don't want to know you, especially considering we had just like lost spouses.
Yeah.
But it's very fitting for John that he bonded with Firestarter through work. Like once they were like actually working and on like a goal, that's when they really started to kind of get along and were almost kind of like friendly bantering at some point. Like it was really interesting.
It has no life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the work.
Yeah, it's like if you put him in like a what's it called? Yeah, if you would put him in a situation where like he had to like socialize, like it was like a group meeting or something, he would not. But you take those same group of people, and if they're out doing an operation, he would probably like, yeah, shoot little friendly banter. Like his social life is directly tied to his work, essentially, is what it comes down to. So it was very fitting that it wasn't until they were actually working that like Firestarter and Foxtrot started to kind of like bond and even were a little like friendly bantering with each other at some point because they were like switching off and all that.
No, there's a certain aspect of too. It's like we've seen some shit. Have you also seen some shit? Yeah, I have.
So my favorite thing about playing Firestarter is that there's like I always think of like, all right, cool. How do you build a character? What's the one critical seed that helps just kind of navigate or really just make these just like really set these decisions? And Firestarter has an inferiority complex that he just projects onto a lot of people, especially his coworkers, and like he just projects a lot of stuff. And so you have, and I don't know if you kind of think about this, like listening to Weirdwood and then listening to the next arc, you'll start seeing like, okay. This you have a professional like CIA operative, a like mid-20s mid-20s like just
CDC
child in his
scientist.
eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with a doctorate, and then you have a firefighter who's only kind of good at this apparently. So it's
Yeah,
like, all right, let's fuck with it.
indeed. Well, so I guess that kind of brings us to our last as we stumble through this little chapter of ours. The Naira Lethra reveal, and then just kind of the fallout of that, which, yeah, as you may have noticed, the last episode is just long because at a certain point it's like, no, you have to have either we're doing this all at one shot or we're not doing this at all type of thing. Like, it's just one ongoing sequence in my mind of once it's like, once they hit the car, it's like, okay, you have the throwaway crime scene they go to that's like, we're pretty sure we fixed it, or maybe we didn't, maybe we did, but like it's like, yeah, we're here because we have to be because we have to maintain a cover. And then we go to Jimmy's apartment, and it's a very boring, normal apartment until it's not. And as someone who's a huge Nyarlathotep fan, I'm always a fan of when it's like, hey guys, I'm exceedingly human, but also unbelievably dangerous.
Yeah, I think I had told you when we finished the recording that session that like I had pulled my gun out and I was ready to shoot directly at Nyarlathotep. Or I forget how to pronounce his name, but yeah,
Correct.
correctly. Yes, I was ready to shoot at him because as soon as he popped up, I had already aimed my gun at him. But for whatever reason, I didn't take the shot, and I think
You were incredibly smart to not do that. I was prepared to have a 1d100 sand damage roll thrown at one of you guys if you did some certain stuff for that.
Oh shit, that would have been
Yeah, like
interesting.
it's one of those things where kind of like the escalation of when something that powerful shows up. It's like, okay, yeah, it's definitely throwing around some cosmic because it knows our names. It's very not afraid of us. It kind of knows way too much of what's going on, but like you're not visually seeing it doing something that weird. Like
Mhm.
Nyarlathotep in Officer Williams' body is not that much stranger than anything else you've seen. What he's saying is a real problem, but like he's not visibly something horrifying. Like you can still mentally be okay. It's just like maybe he's psychic. Maybe like there's a bunch of like lies you can tell yourself that may be like dead in the sand damage at that point. But like if the dude tanks a shotgun blast to the body and it's just like his meat gets pulled away, but because Nyarlathotep doesn't care, the body just kind of like states like, oh yes, my 2/3 of my body is gone, but because I'm me, I don't have to care about that. So it's just kind of puppeting around a person that's had a big chunk of their body shut off because he just forgets that people should die from that because he can't die. That's a whole other topic.
That would have been a gnarly moment to experience. Like if he had blown off part of his head and he just kind of
Yeah.
keeps talking through whatever is left of the jaw and the mouth or something.
Maybe he keeps talking without the head even being there type of thing. Like it's the whole idea of like he's just in a meat suit at that point, doing whatever he wants. Like it's nothing you can do at that point. He's like, just I'm here. We're gonna have a casual conversation about stuff. I'm gonna be way too friendly and forthcoming about stuff I know. See y'all in Philly.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, that was a great reveal. Because I think also, yeah, again, I wish Dylan was here to talk about like because Florence has a history with
Yes.
yeah. And does
Oh,
Fireshutter
yeah.
have a history with Nyarlathotep at all? No, right?
It's
The
just
tranche
like
connection, but yes, like
Okay.
it's as we will get into kind of in the final chapter of this whole little campaign of ours. Branch has a history she has some problems with. Like, she has a real hatred for Egyptian artifacts and other things that may or may not be linked to a very specific elder god you may have run into, type of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, no, that's also kind of a season 3 thing of this. That's gonna be a T cell story in more depth. We've done my three favorite. We're doing my 3 favorite kind of eldritch entities in the big bad category, and we're finishing off the story arc of all of this kind of 3-part Delta Green story with maybe not my favorite, but the one you can do the most kind of weird stuff with. But yeah, it's that's getting way ahead of myself. But yeah, I think it's what I liked is the fact that when the Nyarlathotep reveal happens, when Jimmy goes, "May he eat your my Lord Nyarlathotep's not eat your soul" type of thing, you have this fantastic shift from F Cell is in 100% control to oh no, you're in like negative 50% control. Like, yeah, Jimmy's dead, but like, it doesn't matter. None
Yeah.
of this matters. Like, congrats, you played yourself as the kind of epitome of that moment. It's like, yeah, you did this unbelievably dark thing, and yeah, you got some answers out of it, but also, was it worth it?
real quick. Just I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but I just need to verify. Um, the Nyarlathotep reveal was going to happen regardless by the end of this.
A version of it, yeah. The version you guys got though was like if you killed Jimmy in kind of like without knowing what the hell's going on or kind of how involved Jimmy actually is, like because like as we kind of established and talked about some, you guys didn't know Jimmy was behind it up until that point. Like it's the he has if he dies, he has to basically say, "Yo, I'm the one behind it," without saying, "I'm the one behind it," and
Okay,
that's how he's gonna say it.
so our decision, our decision with with killing Jimmy,
Yeah.
ultimately just radically changed and cemented the way that we were going to be taking the rest of this campaign.
Yeah, a little bit.
Jesus Christ! Like that scene is a lot more a lot heavier than I expected it
Like
to
the rest of
Yeah.
the campaign, it's the rest of the campaign. I think it's more like it's definitely the rest of the operation. Like it's one of those ones where Jimmy dies, Tree is gone, the serial killings do stop. Like Jimmy was behind it, he's the one behind it type of thing. He was the only one, a cult of one. You kill Jimmy, stuff ends. Situation's fixed, you get to go home. If you could have still found the tree, you went to Jimmy's apartment and you kind of had Nyarlathotep there cleaning up or just hanging out because there's an artifact in Jimmy's closet that he's using to commune with him. Like it basically it cranks the dangers of everything all the way up to 11 switch at that point, but also, yeah, some stuff happens in later chapters, the last chapter of this, that I'm like, okay, if this happens, like if they basically it's the chain of like, okay, Jimmy dies, Nyarlathotep is a major part of the story, and if they depending on where they go from what choices are made once the Nyarlathotep switch is kicked on, events in the future will be impacted by this because like Nyarlathotep's like, oh hey, playthings.
So does this mean that that potential serial killer tree is still alive and out there technically?
Maybe not out there, but it's still alive. It's just not on our dimension anymore
Oh, okay. So it's like it's not a factor per se at the moment.
for now.
Okay. So we have a
Come
tree to
back,
worry about.
maybe.
please.
That was unsettling now. Thank you.
There are a variety of inanimate objects throughout the campaign that are like really actually huge problems. And the
Oh,
fact that Nyarlathotep takes his tree and goes home with it's kind of a funny idea.
Yeah, right?
take my ball and go.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of just dangerous objects and whatnot, I think is is
The Rock
the
is back.
next
The Rock is back at the end of this. Florence has Rocco at the end of this operation, or little Rock baby, whatever the correct name for that thing is. Yeah, he's back in play. It's back in play. She's back in play.
and like you start letting us just really explore just our consequences with these green boxes and stuff.
There are a collection of endings to this campaign that, like, when I remember when I came up with them, I'm like, there's no way we're gonna get here. And like, two of the most extreme endings I came up with, I'm like, holy crap, we've ticked all the boxes for this.
One of them is the cowbells, isn't it?
Uh, yeah, and we'll talk about that one. I've given you all the hints of how the cowbell thing plays out, and stay tuned next arc for Firestarter finds himself a day job, I guess, whatever the correct phrase is, retirement plan.
Firestarter side hustle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to pay them
Oh
bills,
boy.
indeed. But yeah, that's Weirdwood. Yeah, it's a weird one because it's kind of a bottle episode because I had to not had to, but because it was the location given by the kind of contest, it ironically becomes incredibly important to the rest of the campaign. Where it's like, yeah, it's self-contained in a way the rest of the operations aren't, but like there's stuff that happens in this that definitely becomes a major factor down the road, or kind of decisions made here pay off. And I think it's one of those ones where kind of in the same way that you have Vicky, you now have whatever's behind this capable of going like, you tortured two people to death. Yeah, I know about that. Why do you do this? Normal people don't do that. What the hell's wrong with you? All this job does is take from you and make you do terrible things. How's your daughter, by the way, Firestarter? Yes, I'm aware she exists. Yeah,
Oh man.
but more on that next arc as we get more into. So if you've been kind of waiting for the okay, we have to start getting into the end game for this. The next arc is the start of the end game. I think that's the I officially explain things in a little bit more detail. Still annoyingly vague and whatnot, but you get a better sense of kind of what the drive behind this. And it's also the start of the second to last arc. We only have 2 more chapters in this in Hawthorne's Crusade. I have to ask this every time we do this, though. Have either of you figured out why this is called Hawthorne's Crusade yet?
No.
Nope. Even up to all that we've played so far, I get maybe the Crusade part, but not the Hawthorne part.
I'm head empty, just rolls.
There. No, it's not important to the actual campaign. I think you guys will kind of get a kick out of it once I explain why Hawthorne's Crusade is Hawthorne's Crusade and the aha moment that will happen sometime down the road, hypothetically. But
well, I will say actually, so I didn't realize like the name of the campaigns are really interesting. Like I didn't realize their like connection to it initially because our first chapter was called NIMBY. I had no idea what NIMBY meant until a little while back recently. So after I found out what NIMBY meant, I was like, now it makes sense. And then I'm like, yeah, no, you definitely do put in a lot of meaning behind like the naming. I still, like I said, haven't figured out the actual meaning of Hawthorne's Crusade, but yes, like it all comes together slowly but surely.
There's gonna be a viewer. There's gonna be a viewer at some point, or a listener at some point, where they're just like, kind of in the backlog, just listening to this. It's like, how the fuck did they not get this?
the fact that you guys have figured out, like, the fact that we've not recorded the final parts of the final chapter yet, the fact that you guys do not know what Eldritch entity's behind this, it's one of those things where I'm like, no, this is some, like, yes, needlessly specific Cthulhu knowledge, deep cuts, but also there is someone listening to this going, I know what it is! It changes everything.
Yeah, I just, yeah, I'm sure you'll have to explain it to me at some point for sure. Like, because I probably still won't get it afterwards.
we will do a live stream at the end of it, and we will also do our normal hi. So now that we can talk about spoilers in depth, here's the explanation for the feed. We've done that for all the campaigns we've done so far that are longer than like 2 episodes. So yeah, no, kind of we get to kind of, with context and with your immediate reactions after completing the campaign, because we do these live streams. Like, we recorded this back in like March, I think, or something. Like, no, maybe not that long ago, but like September is when we recorded Weirdwood a while ago. Maybe October. Like it, but yeah, it takes a while for them to get out there, and we have kind of time to ruminate on stuff, and kind of there's a raw reaction that fades with time that you just can't capture without having a spoiler episode at the end of every arc, and that's not fun because you want to know all the spoilers or none of the spoilers, I guess, in my mind. But
yeah,
it's neither here nor there. Yeah.
Well, I guess at this point we can.
Shout out to our handler for constantly just giving us some fucking good shit to work with and weaving all this shit together. So, Charlie, thank you again.
Yeah, you guys make it fun. I'm definitely one of those GMs that kind of really looks forward to when I can talk about all the weird stuff at the end of this. It's like I love running this game. I love kind of everything we've done so far, but like there's a part of me that's like, I can't wait for Alex to understand what Hawthorne's Crusade is a reference to. It's gotta be a 30-second kind of clip of him going, oh, damn.
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, like, it is such a, it's the, knowing what that name means for the campaign recontextualizes the entirety of what happens in the campaign in some very fascinatingly weird ways. And also gives you, like, some tricks that, like, we will touch about all this in the future. I don't want to get into kind of some of the deeper cuts of the implications of the name, but if you figured it out, let me know. Send us a message. I will confirm if you've gotten it right or not.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody else will figure it out before I do. You're gonna have to literally spell it out for me.
This was a name formed in the bowels of the darkest parts of GM Reddit, where like it was me and 30 other people arguing about what the correct reference to make this thing was, and like it's only 2 words, just Hawthorne's Crusade, but like it's what was the second correct word? Like it's okay, I want to put this in there because it's a reference to this. What do we do for the second word? And like it's It's like, is it Crusade or is it like Legacy? Like, what is the correct call at this point for this one? Doesn't get totally give it away, but
Hmm.
neither here nor there.
Yeah. I can't wait for the
Have
aha
fun.
moment. I cannot wait for the aha moment. So,
Oh, me neither. Seems like we're starting to wind stuff down. I'm not seeing lots of questions in chat, but if you have any questions, chat, send them up now and we'll answer some of those questions. But yeah, I want to take a quick second to just thank everyone that listens to the show, watches the show on YouTube. It's super cool that everyone does that. I'm always amazed that we have a listener, let alone any listeners, and listenership is growing, which means either you're telling your friends or you're doing what I say in the intro, which is victimizing other people with it. Either way, thanks for listening to this stuff. It makes it a lot more fun
mm-hmm.
to do this. We also want to have a special thank you for our first official Patreon patron. They are hashtag FarmLife. Thank you so much for throwing some money at this nightmare project we find ourselves engaged in. We are super grateful for it. We're hoping you're enjoying admittedly the scant but the kind of behind the scenes stuff we do have in the Patreon. If you're curious what that is, it's lots of session zeros and some kind of. If you want to listen to all of JCell in 4 audio files, I have it just there in as arc specific audio files that are each like 6 hours long to make it easier to get through. But yeah,
Mm.
if you want to support the show, go throw some money there. There is some stuff waiting there for you. If more people do that, maybe we can do some more weird stuff with it. But yeah, not seeing any questions in chat. I guess specifically for Weirdwood, we've kind of beaten this one to death, I think. You two got any more on this topic? Any questions that like you've been having burning in the back of your brain about Weirdwood you want answered?
No, I don't think I have anything in particular right now at the moment, honestly. I think the whole like, hey, is a tree cell out there thing, now that you brought it up, was my concern. But since you said, Nylothotep packed up his tree and went home, I guess I shouldn't have to worry about the tree for now, but I'm sure it's gonna pop up at some point. But also, I will say again, shout outs to you for like putting together a whole campaign about a fan picked location. Like you literally just started digging in and put together a whole thing. Not having that location originally planned is really awesome.
Yeah, that was from I think let me get the exact name for this so we can give him credit for it. I think it was Maps and yeah. On Twitter it's at letter N underscore quest or Maps and Quest. He makes map stuff or he makes battle maps for various tabletop RPGs.
Heck
Go
yeah.
check him out. But yeah, he threw Savannah, Georgia at us. He grew up there, is my understanding. I think it's a he. Sorry, they picked the location. They grew up there, and I'm really sorry for what we said about Savannah, Georgia, but it's all historically true.
Did you get any feedback after that from that user who picked the location?
Not on this one. It's always funny when I think my favorite reactions are still from J-Cell, where 2 towns we kind of beat up on heavily in that one, implying they were in the middle of nowhere. We got people saying, like, you didn't go far enough, but also fuck you for making fun of my town. They're like, it's like you could have gone so much further. I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to be a total asshole to these townspeople live. And like, yeah, I get it. Like, you don't get to pick where you're born type of thing. Like, it's not your fault that you were born in this town that like I can be like, yeah, 110 people live here. There's no reason this town should exist. It has a restaurant and the feed store, town hall, and like post office are the same rundown building. The biggest building you have is the ranger station. None of this is inaccurate, but it's also like it's a little bit mean to make that a plot point. But also, if you're gonna be a Nazi hiding out and underneath a farm, not a bad place to pick. It's the middle of goddamn nowhere for your corpse mushroom experiments, but that's J-Cell. Yeah. Nah, no reaction to Savannah. I think it's again like it's one of those things where like once you have a town that on their tourism site is like we're the most haunted city in the U.S. We didn't say anything that was contradictory to that. We're not like no, it's not the most haunted city. That's actually Tulsa.
Are we going to Tulsa?
Not unless we play Vampire the Masquerade, because I want to just put something there because Tulsa's a fun one to say.
Also, if anything else, Alex, if you haven't had the chance to, The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. If you want to get into some other Nyarlathotep shenanigans, it's a 3-hour audiobook.
Uh-huh.
So it's a nice little kind of like novella to just boop right into.
Well, if it's on Audible, I can definitely pick it up because I've got some credits stored on Audible right now.
It is.
Perfect. That's
It is.
Yeah, can you write it down and send it to me on Discord? And I'll
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll get that.
I've actually been thinking about floating the idea of us starting for Patreons actually kind of a negative modifier reading club because Chad keeps sending me books that make it to the top of my queue, and I'm like, I need to find people to talk to about these books because I have thoughts about a couple of them, but the Ballad of Black Tom is really goddamn good to the point where I'm like, can I shoehorn a reference into this and we haven't recorded yet? Like, is there a green box item in here? Yeah, but also like, there's maybe an operation in here too, potentially. I'm not quite sure what that operation is, but there's some stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that does it for this stream. Unless chat wants to chime in with some last minute questions, but I ain't seeing any.
Yep.
Next up is gotta have this actually prepared in front of me. Our next operation is Diametrics.
Diametrics is what it's called?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a long one. The chapter arcs get meaningfully longer from this point on too. I think that one's gonna wind up being closer to 10 episodes again, give or take. But plenty more negative modifier Delta Green goodness to go around.
Actually, now that I think about it, when did we record our first episode of this campaign?
I can tell you that actually.
Because I'm wondering if we've already hit like our anniversary of this group potentially.
Holy hell, we have. Yeah, the 18th was when we recorded the first episode for NIMBY.
18th of what? March?
March.
Yeah, so I was right. We actually we technically are celebrating a anniversary of our group playing together because
we've been playing. Hawthorne's Frid's taken a year to record. Apparently, I did not put that into full perspective.
Yeah,
we've been awful people together for a year.
The real question is if we have enough episodes to run all the way to August because that's been airing for an entire year. Which, if that's the case, oh god. Maybe it also makes me reconsider the fact that there's 2 Call of Cthulhu campaigns out there that are explained as like, yeah, they take 9 months to a year to run minimum. And I'm like, that's too long, but if that's how long it took Hawthorne's Crusade to run, I might be like, I can do that.
Yeah. That doesn't sound so bad now.
I've made that mistake.
Well, I mean, if you really wanted to run a year-long Call of Cthulhu campaign, you do have a couple books and a couple short stories.
Those are the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about like Mask of Nyarlathotep, Horror on the Orient Express, and like Beyond the Mountains of Madness. Each of those books in the first 5 pages is like, yes, it's gotta take a while to get through. Like, this is gonna run for at least 6 months if you're playing 4 hours a week type of thing. These are long campaigns. They're 2 books. There's almost 1,000 pages of source material here for you to pull through, and I'm like, that's too much source material. But also, they're very good books and very good campaigns. But we are rambling at this point. Any final thoughts before we close this one out?
No, I think I mean, I've said what I needed to say. It was been a pleasure playing with you guys, and I'm looking forward to all of our, the remaining campaign stuff we have, and then whatever next game we jump into at some point. So
yeah. Still figuring out the order of that, but don't worry, we have more Delta Green coming in the future after our brief jaunt to space, and sure sounds we're going to run some Vampire the Masquerade in the nearest future, so also by night coming soon to this podcast, apparently.
I do love that I sent you that one video, or you saw my story on Instagram, and then shortly after you replied, that's it, we're playing Sibarium or whatever it's called.
That's it, we're playing Sumbarum.
Sumbarum, yes.
Yeah. None of this going into the forest bullshit for you. Time for some Sumbarum up your ass. Yeah, no, it's that brutal dark forest.
Oh.
Yes, that's the future though too. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Cool. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the ending. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or, follow our social medias. Yeah. What's the Twitter handle? Is it like Negative Modifier?
At NegModPod. It's in the social media links. It's
yeah.
Catch it on YouTube. It's there. If you're catching this on Twitch, it's also there.
Yeah, and of course, each of us have our own handles. I go by Mave Online on, like I said, on all the social medias and things like that. Charlie goes by Mord 4K. So you can find him. I think, is that yours across the board, or is it just
almost everywhere at this point? Yeah, I've managed to keep that streak alive.
And then, of course, Chad, he goes by, was it FKA heterosexual? I don't know what it means. But
formerly known as.
Oh, okay.
means formerly known as.
Gotcha. And that's on Twitter, right?
That's on Twitter.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Is there any other stuff you guys want to plug really quick before we call it?
No, that's it for me. This is a podcast called Negative Modifier you should listen to.
Yeah. Check us out. And if you feel so inclined, you don't have to, but we would appreciate it. Check out our Patreon. We do have some cool stuff behind the scenes, and it'd be awesome. The support. Absolutely don't have to, but hey, if you can, cool, we would appreciate it.
If you're also a bit afraid of commitments, we do have a Ko-Fi where you can get kind of piecemeal all the contents on the Patreon as well for a bit of an upcharge because it's on a piece-by-piece basis, but we get it.
Yep.
Giving you options.
Yep. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and call it, and good night, or good evening, good afternoon, and till next time.
Later.
Adios. Thank you.